Thank you for joining us. I'm Daniel O'Neill. I am the chair of HYLA CLE committee for the bar year that just started. We really appreciate you joining us for this fantastic panel that we've been able to put together. So June is Pride Month. Last year, it was a little different with the pandemic that was a little underway. And this year, it's still a little different with the pandemic starting, hopefully, light at the end of the tunnel. People are getting vaccinated, things should be ending. So we wanted to take the opportunity to have our June CLE program be a Pride Month celebration. So we're going to hear different perspectives and personal truths and hopeful things for the future from some very highly respected, well-established people coming from the nonprofit background, from the legal practice background, and also from small business owners. So let me go ahead and start introducing. So we have Rebecca Councill. Rebecca is known for her creative hair, Converse, Lego images, and ability to take challenging web and social media topics and deliver them in bite-sized pieces for small business owners and companies of various sizes to understand and implement. As the owner of CLR Digital Media Services, the Digital Ninja teaches everyday people how to strategically use social media to build a healthy social media footprint. Companies and organizations have tapped Rebecca to speak at annual conferences and training events and usually invite her back instantly after hearing her presentation. She loves to help the LGBTQIA community gain visibility and educate others how to be allies to the community. Today, Rebecca is enjoying the journey of helping small business owners, companies, and organizations engage their audience via social media and is cooking up even more social media goodness. So thank you very much for joining us, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And then next, we have Michael J. Ritter of San Antonio. For the lawyers who are in the audience, you might recognize him from the recent Texas Young Lawyers Association voting that just wrapped up, where Michael was elected president-elect, and he's going to serve as the TYLA president from June 22 to June 23. Michael is a staff attorney at the Fourth Court of Appeals in San Antonio, and he was the first openly gay candidate for TYLA president-elect, and he won. So that is awesome all around. He is certified in civil appeals and criminal appeals by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization and has been recognized among San Antonio's top appellate attorneys by San Antonio Magazine. Michael also works a part-time job in the education industry. He currently serves as TYLA's vice president and has served as its secretary and on several committees. He has received personal and project awards from TYLA, the American Bar Association, the State Bar of Texas, and Texas Bar College. He's a Texas Bar Foundation Sustaining Life Fellow. He's also served as president of the Texas Association of Appellate Court Attorneys and the San Antonio LGBT Bar Association, and as a member of the San Antonio Young Lawyers Association Board of Directors. So thank you so much for joining us, Michael. We had a third panelist who is having some technical difficulties, it appears like, who has not joined us yet. So I will go ahead and just introduce, and if our extra person shows up, that is fantastic. But if not, you get to hear a little bit about Josephine. So Josephine Titsworth is the executive director of the Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Summit. Josephine is a legend. For any of you in the audience, if you have ever attended the Trans Unity Banquet, you have seen the 1981 banner that honors Josephine. Josephine is a fierce social justice activist. There's Josephine right now.
Hey, I finally made it.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I was right in the middle of your introduction, so let me, I'll go ahead and start over for everybody. Lucy can edit that out. So we have Josephine Titsworth here, Executive Director of the Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Summit. And Josephine is one of my personal heroes. You'll hear a little bit about that real soon. Josephine is a fierce social justice activist and one of the kindest, most compassionate people you can meet that works for community solidarity and helps others develop their leadership skills. Josephine is a veteran from the Coast Guard, is a licensed master social worker, and is ABD at the University of Houston College of Social Work. Josephine never backs down from a fight and personally took on discrimination in Texas family law to get her grandson out of foster care. In 2009, she founded the Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Summit, which is a grassroots effort to look at strategic approaches to the issues of social justice and policy implementation in regards to the concepts of gender identity and gender expression, working to end discrimination in those areas. In 2009, there were only 3 universities in Texas with inclusive policies: Rice University, the University of Texas, and South Texas College of Law. In the spring of 2016, there were 38 university systems and 5 Texas independent school districts. In April of 2014, the Student Government Association at the University of Houston passed the Josephine Titsworth Act. The student bill addressed the safety concerns of transgender people on campus. The bill allows transgender students to use their proper name, title, and gender when completing official university documents. So thank you so much for joining us, Josephine. The MCLE course number is in the chat for all the lawyers who need to report that, and we'll circle back around on that at the end. But after introductions are complete, kind of the hope is everybody will kind of share equal time. It'll be an organic conversation. I'm a hands-off kind of person who's supervising the Zoom. So if y'all have any questions for me, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to mute myself and I'm going to enjoy this presentation. So thank you all, and take it away.
So is there anything you want us to start with to make sure that gets covered, Daniel, for your audience?
For now, open-ended, kind of wherever y'all want to start about, your background, anything that you think is super important to kind of start off with. If I left stuff out of introductions, I apologize in advance. If there's anything y'all want to talk about, it's your show at this point. We'll keep an eye on the chat just for attendees. If y'all have any questions, please just throw them in the chat, and one of us will say, let's look at the chat right now. All right.
Well, so I'll start. I identify as, my pronouns are she, they, and I have been married to my wife. We met 17 years ago at work, and we have been married for 7 of those 17 years. She is a social justice activist who actually now works at Rice University. She is a LCSW. I have to get that right because every time I say LMSW, she's like, no. So our house is all about social justice and about equal rights, and even dogs that are barking, so I apologize if you can hear her. So I have been doing what I do for 8 years. I own my own business, and I've started doing webinars on teaching people how to properly market toward the gay and lesbian community, not just the one time a year when they put the pretty little rainbow pic on their profile to show that they're in the lights with the community. Because as we know, that's a one time a year activism, and that's not really what works. So yeah, so that's more about who I am and what I do. Y'all are quiet.
I know. Excuse me. Golly, I don't know how to start this. Rebecca, Michael, Daniel, thank you for inviting me. You're going to lose my video soon because my laptop has a problem with videos, but I will see y'all, but you'll get my voice. And so, but anyways, I've been passionate, very passionate about equal rights for transgender people. And it's been let me kind of frame it in this sense. I've been active within the transgender community since 1981. And if I can help someone avoid the pits that I've had to go through and fall through, then that's what I need to do, is help these people. Right now in our schools in Texas, the majority of the schools in Texas have no policies that protect transgender faculty, staff, and students. And that's independent school districts all the way up to universities and everything in between. And so we need to fix that. Now, one thing that I want to put this forward too is as of August 31st, 2021, that will be my last day as executive director for the Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Summit. Well, it's not, we changed the name. Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Scholars, because most of us in the executive position on here are published authors and researchers. So we changed the name to reflect that. We do research and we try and help people. But anyways, I'm retiring August 31st. After I've been with the organization, this is my 13th year. And I'm really proud of the work we've done, but yet the work that needs to be done is still out there. In order for transgender people to enjoy freedom in Texas, it starts with the schools. If we can get the schools to come around, then the people coming out of school will be more prepared to associate with us. So that's all I have to say. It's your turn, Michael.
Well, thanks, Josephine. That was really inspiring. And I connect with a lot of what you said in terms of my philosophy in terms of service and helping others. You know, you talk about the schools, and that's probably one of the biggest issues right now is making sure LGBTQ plus youth feel comfortable at school. And on the flip side of the hard work that you're doing are people who don't understand what it means and are afraid and are even so fearful that they'll hire a lawyer to try to challenge it, you know, in some cases. And that's kind of where I come in to the picture, which is as an attorney who's out, helping other attorneys, you know, feel free to be themselves and to represent themselves that way to the public, because what a lot of people don't understand is that Texas is very diverse, and our lawyers need to be diverse to address those diverse needs. And taking a step back, whenever I was growing up, I was my parents sent me to conversion therapy when I came out, and it was a very challenging time for me. I started developing some mental health issues early on in school, and yeah, I was very fortunate. You know, I've been talking about, you know, the privileges that we have. You know, as a white male, I have a lot of privileges in certain respects that helps me get through that. And, you know, one of the topics I think we're going to discuss today is intersectionality and understanding how, you know, privilege and discrimination and systemic effects of prejudice sort of permeate throughout our society. And, you know, growing up and surviving what I did, you know, it's important for me to be vocal about that, because a lot of people probably struggled with that. And through sharing our stories about how we're trying to make a difference and an impact now is, I think, the next step forward. So as the chair of the LGBT law section of the San Antonio Bar Association, and on the LGBT Law Council, the State Bar of Texas, one of our goals is to help lawyers be more competent in the various areas that affect the LGBT plus community.
So Josephine said something that I don't really agree with. She said that it starts in the schools. I think that it needs to start at a broader range. I think that it needs to start, if not at home, then in the community. I think that school is a place where kids can go to get support if they need it. But I think that us as community people need to be there to help others understand the harmful effects of what discrimination does. I know for myself, I shared an article that they did with Chick-fil-A about the equality bill and how it's hurting trans kids and that type of stuff. And one of my friends who I love dearly is a conservative Republican. He is very much an advocate for me and my wife. He also doesn't believe that you should hold businesses accountable for who they contribute money to, and that if their food is good, you should go ahead and eat there because, you know, they make great food. Great, that's good. I'm glad that you like their food. But he also said something that struck me, and that was that when somebody gets hired on at Chick-fil-A, that they sorry about that. They teach them to be good business people. They teach them how to do a job properly. They train them and accordingly with business ethics. And so I think that I think that whenever you support whoever you're supporting, I think it's important that you understand their values behind what they do. And so I think that just starting this in the school, we're missing out on people in the community. Our neighbor had never met a person who was LGBT. They had never met two lesbians or two of the same sex people who got married until we got married. And I had to educate her husband. He's from Mexico, and I had to educate him on the fact that we're not living in sin. It's not a bad thing. And so, I think that we need to do more in the community versus just, and I agree, Josephine, I think that, the work that you do in the schools and the work that you do with your grassroots, I think that's amazing. And I was so excited to be part of it. But I think that it's a more broader range. I think that, the community needs more education, and yeah, so I'll stop there because I have a high horse and I will stand on my platform and I will preach all day long. Did we lose her?
No, I'm still here.
I just didn't know if she was still there.
Hey, as I've always done, Rebecca, I listen to you.
No, and I don't want you to listen to me. I want to hear, you and I have a great relationship.
Yes, we do.
I love you, and I've known you for such a long time. And I think that even though we have some different insights on different things, because, we are different people and we have different backgrounds. I think that the conversations that you and I have always had have been meaningful. And so I don't want you just to listen to me. I want you to I want you to conversate with me.
Uh-huh. This is true. We've been friends for a very long time. Close to 20 years.
Yep.
That's one of the things about the LGBTQIA community is that there's a lot of diversity and a lot of differences within our community. And one thing that brings us all together is the ability to approach each other with respect and our ability to have a dialogue to exchange ideas so that we can come to understanding with our own community to help us make advancements for everybody within our community and people outside of our community as well.
Yeah.
Since it's Pride Month,
go ahead.
Rebecca, Josephine, what have you noticed different about this year as compared to last in terms of your experience or energy in the community?
Oh gosh, this pandemic has really slowed things down for us in the organization for sure. We're going to have a virtual summit July 24th, but last year we were scheduled to do a summit at Texas Tech University, but we had to cancel it. And that really hurt us. And we dabbled in trying to have monthly webinars. And our inexperience on having webinars really showed. And so we need more education in that area. But it's been tough, really tough, to keep the passion and enthusiasm up for social justice. It's been really tough. And the lack of interaction with people has been really hard.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people who are used to doing in-person events, they suffered until they figured out, the virtual aspect of that. I think that I know that Pride Houston did some virtual stuff last year, and they're moving their Pride events to September, I think. I think it's September, but yeah, I mean, it was a lot different. A lot of people who are just coming out who needed that in-person support that they usually get at events, they couldn't get it. And so, I know that I myself turned to TikTok because I wanted to see what it was like. And a lot of my friends were posting these pictures of TikTok. And so, I started watching it at night, and I realized that a lot of our community took to TikTok. They were there to support each other. They created this club called the Alphabet Mafia. And so unless you were on TikTok, you didn't know what that was. And, it's just social media has its place in helping our community keep going, whether it's during a pandemic or, just wanting someplace to be safe. Because if you're coming out as trans and your parents are Republican or don't understand that, you're not trying to hurt other people and you just need to be who you need to be for yourself, then I think that social media is a great way for young ones to do that. I think that, and that's why I think that it's more of a community versus school thing, because I think that as an out person who came out, I knew that I was gay when I was 7, because when my best friend would sleep over, we would have mommy and daddy time at night after everybody else went to bed. And so, we would play house, and I was the dad, she was the mom. And I knew that I was in love with her the moment that I first kissed her. I just knew it. And so I think that a lot of people who lived back in the 80s that didn't have the things that we have now, we had either to keep it stuffed in. I came out full steam when I was 29 to everybody, and it blew a lot of people by surprise, and a lot of people were like, duh. And so, I think that social media is both helpful and hurtful in the same way. But yeah, I think that the pandemic played a lot in getting a lot of people on social so that they could still connect with who they need to connect with and build those relationships that are helpful to our younger generation.
I agree. When I was, since we're talking about lawyer stuff, when I was involved in trying to get my grandson out of foster care, it wasn't easy at all, not at all. But I had a fantastic lawyer. Am I allowed to mention her name?
You can if you feel comfortable. She joins us for CLEs about once a year, so some people in the audience will know her.
Okay, all right. My lawyer was Angela Oakes, and she was amazing. I wrote an article that got published called Josephine's Problem that chronicled what took place in that courtroom. But 3 of my grandsons were taken away from her mother and put into foster care. The oldest one, the requirement was that that child could not be in a home with another child. Yet in foster care, they had him sharing a room with another person. I saw conflict. I'm a social worker, and I was being denied kinship care. I'm highly qualified. I was highly qualified. Published author, honorable discharge from the military, highly educated, and yet they thought all they saw was transgender, nothing else. Nothing else mattered, just transgender. And the CASA rep interviewed my ex-brother-in-law. And one of the things he asked my ex-brother-in-law was, how do you feel about Josephine's problem? That immediately indicates discrimination. Immediately. And every time the CASA rep would come to my home to try and, talk to me and interview, whatever, it would always come up to give me a challenge, thinking, well, you don't have enough money to take care of this issue. So he would say, you have to do this or that or whatever. But fortunately, I had a transgender community backing me up too. And they helped me with all those finances. So I was able to meet every challenge that was thrown at me. But in court, golly, it was amazing. I'm sitting next to the ad litem attorney for my grandson, and who is really adamantly opposed to me, along with a CASA rep. And I'm watching Angela eat them up. And the court was trying to say, we don't know what's going to happen, its effect on children, all that. I brought people from the community in there to testify with their children. And one of their children was electronics person at Hobby Airport. The other one was an environmentalist specialist, graduated from A&M. And they were perfectly, I don't like using this word, but they were perfectly normal. And trying to find normal. And I don't think we ever can get a really good definition of normal. But anyways, they were. And then I brought in another transgender person who was a doctor at the Houston Medical Center. They would not let them testify. They were not allowed to testify. The judge forbid it. The judge was afraid to face the truth. And so in the end, final arguments, Angela just blew me away on that. Chewed the judge out. She felt like, well, we've already lost, so I got nothing to lose. So she just flat chewed that judge out. And in the end, the judge awarded me custody of my oldest grandson. And the ad litem attorney sitting next to me went, ooh, when that was announced. So lawyers play an extremely important part in social justice. There are times when reason, science, and education doesn't get you anywhere, and you need a lawyer. And I'm really proud of all you lawyers out there. Really proud of y'all. So I got custody of him when he was 9 years old. He's 18 now, and he's graduating from high school on Friday. So he came up perfectly okay. And he likes Daniel, by the way.
In the time that I got to know him, he's blossomed into, he went from one extreme to a perfectly normal kid. I mean, he's matured so much, and he's just, Josephine, you did an amazing job with him.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I'll echo that. And it's fantastic. He's graduating from high school.
It's a big step for him. But anyways, I had to bring that up because we're talking about lawyer stuff. And I had to bring that up to show just how important you guys are. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a social worker. I am not a lawyer. And so, but I could do the background work for lawyers.
Well, we all play a very important part in a bigger effort. And yeah, you can often count on lawyers to bring the passion to the table when other things aren't working out, and to be an advocate. That's really what we're trained and doing. And I'm glad to hear that that was effective for you. And I work at a court of appeals, so a lot of the witnesses and jury stuff happens in the trial court, and so when it comes up to our court, it's all in a transcript, and we read briefs that have been written and write opinions. But what I've seen on the appellate side of things is a willingness of the appellate bench, by and large, to use preferred gender pronouns whenever it's identified by the party's attorneys, to use the chosen name as the parties, and also more of an understanding about gender nonconformity across the board, even from same-sex relationships to gender identity issues, and being more respectful of that. There's more work to do. There was I think there was a Fifth Circuit case, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, involving a criminal defendant who was transitioning and wanted to change their name. And the Fifth Circuit flatly refused to use their preferred gender pronouns. And yeah, so there's some work to do. That's on the federal level. I work on the state level. And so there's definitely some progress being made there for sure, but definitely a lot more work needs to be done.
So I don't know. I have an issue with the words preferred pronouns. I've always had this issue, and I've always had this debate with people. I think it's wrong to say preferred pronoun. I would prefer to be, same level playing field as everybody else, but I'm not. I don't think that pronouns play the same game. I think that it's the same way with your name. You don't have a preferred name. When people change their name to fit who they are, there's a lot of soul searching that goes into that. They try on different names. It's like trying on a shirt, or if you wear underwear, it's like trying on the right size underwear to make sure it fits, right? It's not preferred. I'd prefer to not wear any underwear because I like boxers. But it's just, when people say preferred, it's like I would prefer not to be born different ways than other people. I would prefer to have, less body fat, things like that. And so I think that pronouns are very important. I think that they play a huge role into somebody's gender expression and gender identity. And so if you're asking somebody their pronoun, just ask them the pronoun. What is your pronoun? What pronoun do you use? What pronoun do you go by? When you say preferred, there's some underlying issue that they've chose to be the pronoun that they are, and that's not true. And so, I'm sorry, it just hit me, Michael, when you said that. It just kind of went back in my head that, because there's a lot of people that don't understand that. And there's a lot of people that will misgender somebody because of the way that they look. And, it's okay if you do that once, but then you have to learn from it. And you have to understand that, when I walk into a restroom and I've been driving all day and I'm in a small town and I go into the ladies' restroom with the baseball cap and I might have, my regular clothes on because I don't look feminine, people stop me and they're like, "You're in the wrong bathroom." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And so, I think that having a conversation with somebody about a bathroom when you really have to pee is something that's hard because I tend to get a little upset when I have to pee. I have to pee. Okay. I'm over 50. I don't have the strength in my body parts down below to hold my urine in very long. So if we're going to debate the bathroom, we're going to debate it while I pee because I have to pee. And so, you know, I get stopped all the time. Catherine and I are about to take a trip this weekend, and I guarantee you at least 2 people when I walk into a ladies' restroom at a pit stop will look at me like, is she girl? Is that a guy? You know, and so, yeah, so pronouns are important. And I think that they play a lot into, you know, accepting the other person as who they are.
I never mentioned to y'all my pronouns, and I'm rather different in the community. I consider myself to be gender neutral. I don't consider myself transsexual or whatever. I'm gender neutral. I'm more androgynous than anything. I like to wear guy clothes. I like to wear girl clothes. I like to present guy, present girl. It all depends on what my mood is when I wake up out of bed. And so my pronouns, whatever you want to call me, as long as it's not hateful, I don't care. So,
and you know, I have one of my best friends is like that. You know, she's like, I don't care what pronoun you give me, as long as you're nice to me, I just don't care. And so that's great. And Josephine, I'm glad that you said that, because that brings up another point. You know, you don't even have to have a pronoun. You know, at this point, you can just be called by your name.
I spent most of my transgender life. I say transgender life because and I refer to that as the time period when I started acknowledging myself. So I spent most of that time going by the name of Judy Daniels. And when I finally transitioned and Phyllis Fry took care of all the legal stuff for me, I chose the name of Josephine. And so it can change, just like Rebecca says, we could change our names. So anyways, I love you lawyers. You lawyers are awesome.
Yeah, I agree with Josephine.
When speaking of that, we got a fantastic question from the audience from one of the lawyers that we like. So Anieti asked, and this would be a great question for conversation. At the beginning of the presentation, Rebecca made a great point about performative activism or performative allyship by way of companies in June adding the rainbow flag to their profiles. It reminds her of when people were posting black tiles and quotes about diversity and inclusion after the murder of George Floyd last year. Though these types of social media posts can show support to a point, they are quite passive. In what ways can people elevate their allyship of the LGBTQ+ community into something actionable and sustainable? So that's a fantastic question, Anieti. Thank you so much for asking that.
You know, it's funny. I was on a Houston Coalition Against Hate workshop earlier this week, and they brought up that same thing. And one of the people, and I hadn't even thought about it, said that when people do that, they're taking focus off of elevating the Black voices. And so, you know, if everybody changed their profile to rainbow, then it takes away from people who are trying to really give a good history of why the rainbow flag is important. You know, there's 2 different types of rainbows. There's a rainbow that has, you know, 2 different types of blues or 2 different types of purples. And then there's the LGBTQ rainbow, right? So I keep flags on my desk. I don't know. I have all types of flags on my desk. So this one is not even the original flag that we had. I think that it's important that people understand that just because you change your profile pic, it doesn't mean that you're showing your allyship. I think that supporting LGBTQ people in a community is showing allyship. You know, it's not even about boasting that you're supporting them. It's about supporting people internally. You know, you don't even have to tell people that you gave to an organization. Give money to an organization who needs it that's LGBTQ. You don't even have to, you know, if you live in Vitor, Texas, and you're afraid of what people are going to do to you, then don't tell people you did it. The best way to support others is by doing something that is the least amount of danger for yourself. Because I think that just changing your profile is so passive, and I agree. It's not, it's not performative. It's just something that people do. I have clients who are like, okay, June 1st, let's change our profile pic. And I'm like, okay, but let's do something else too, right? Let's, tell people that, if you're trans in the community, that you can stay at your hotel and it's okay, that they can just be there and nothing bad's going to happen to them. That's supporting the community. Being there for somebody who just needs to talk is a way of supporting and giving allyship. Not trying to, not supporting other organizations, whether their food is good or not, is way to do it. If Hobby Lobby is convenient for you, then buy online, go to Michael's. They have, a pride section. They support LGBTQ stuff more than other people in their network does. And so, if you need help looking for LGBTQ community support, go to HRC. They have a great list. So yeah, that's my soapbox again. I apologize.
Rebecca, I had a question about something that you had mentioned when you had stated that, when the client comes to you and they change their profile picture, you use that as an opportunity, like, okay, that's great. Let's talk about what more you can do. Do you feel like Pride Month's an effective, a more effective time period, like having Pride Month enables you to have those conversations more so with your clients, or more willingness to institute greater efforts, or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, when I sign on with a client, the first thing that I do is make sure that they understand that I am part of the LGBTQ community. And so using me as their social media person, they're understanding that they're supporting the LGBTQ community because they're supporting me and my wife. And so one of the things that I do going into Pride Month is we formulate a plan that if somebody needs something, especially during Pride Month, because, that's usually when people come out. It's usually when people get all these hurtful, hateful things, that they have a place that they can just go sit and be safe. And so, I have a client who also is very social justice in the community. And we have that same conversation. They're more on gender-based crimes. And so we're switching that from gender-based to human-based, because domestic violence affects everybody, right? Historically, it affects women because men didn't really want to come out. They didn't want to be labeled as, somebody who couldn't handle their business or whatever, which is awful. And so I'm trying to move them along the lines of, it's not a gender-based, it's a human-based, it's humanity. Women can beat on other women, men can beat on other men, trans people can be abused as well by people that they know and people that they don't know. Sex workers get abused on a daily basis. It's not just women, it's men, it's people who identify as, on the continuum of gender. And so I think that, I think having conversations about Pride history is important, not just about it happening right now, but the history of it, because last year with George Foreman, people have started understanding that Pride Month wasn't just a parade of pretty colors, right? It started off as a riot, right? Because we couldn't be in a gay bar and be safe. And so I think that informing people is something that has to happen year round, but I think going into Pride is something that really needs to happen. If they're going to change their profile pic, and if there's somebody that I associate with, there's going to be more than just the changing of the profile pic. There's going to be changing of the attitudes. There's going to be changing of the support. There's going to be changing of the language. There's going to be changing of the doing. And so I think that that's something that a lot of people don't really understand. Does that answer your question? Because I kind of got off on a tangent.
Let me mention one thing here real quick. We need to be careful. I'm a strong supporter of everybody coming out and being visible. It's just through that process that change takes place. Because when people see something that's not fitting their visualization or stereotype, then they're challenged to question themselves. But here's where we got a problem. Young kids who want to go to college, do they tell their parents that they're gay or transgender? Do they tell them? And take a chance of losing their support for college or losing their support for housing? I've facilitated support groups at Hatch for, excuse me, the Montrose Clinic. And I had young kids, school kids, who were trans, and some were homeless, some were not. And we need to weigh the cost of coming out. And that's a tough decision. You got to be sure you're going to be okay and taken care of. You got to take care of yourself. But as soon as you can come out, please come out and let the world know, so they'll start questioning themselves. All right, I was my soapbox.
Well, and I think, Josephine, that you raise a point. I think that when somebody comes out, they need to do so when it's safe for them and when it's time for them, you know, because there's a lot of kids who, you know, I've worked with the Montrose Grace Place. And there's a lot of kids that they help that are homeless and they have nowhere to go because they came out. And so I think that, I think it's important that, you know, just letting people know that you're there to support them whenever or for whatever, you know, is great. And you don't even have to put limits on there. Just knowing that, you know, somebody is there to support a 15-year-old for whatever they need, whether it's coming out as gay, coming out as trans, coming out as non-binary, coming out as gender fluid, coming out as somebody who wants to have blonde hair instead of black hair. You know, I think that when I changed my hair color, my mom and I was 45 when I did that. I think my mom had a coronary. She's like, oh my God, you know, and so I think that just having supportive people in your life for whatever you need is important. And I think that identifying those people before you come out is so helpful. Knowing how to do that and when to do that is something that needs to be learned.
Yeah, when I was a teenager and I'd come out to my family members kind of on a one-by-one basis, and I had first told my sister because I had heard that, you know, younger girls are more okay with it. And I told a couple of my friends and they all happen to be girls and we're fine with it. So I told my sister and she wasn't very receptive to it at all. I told my brother next and he was super cool with it because his two best friends were gay. And then I told my mother, who was like, this was when I was about 15 years old. And she was like, I know. Okay. But I waited to tell my dad because although I was misguided with my sister, I knew my dad was going to take it the hardest. And when I finally did come out to my father, that's when I was into conversion therapy. But I had the support of my best friend's mother, who said, enough of that, come live with me. You can come live with me. And I knew that just because she was going to be there for be that support for me. I could just feel it, even though we never had that discussion, because she would ask if I was dating anybody, if I you know, how things were coming along with me, and is a young gay kid, and if anyone's treating me bad in school, and I just knew that she would be that support for me. And we didn't even need to have that conversation. That that she would be there. You can just feel it. And so that's what the being open about your support of children and young folk can do is, maybe you're not in a position to provide that, but it can be the life-saving thing for that young person. Is everybody in their life, they think everybody is not accepting of who they are, and then they find somebody who is, and that gives them hope to carry on and to see that not all people are forever going to reject who they are, and it can be life-saving in one way or another.
Yeah, I am so glad that you had somebody who helped you. And it doesn't have to be, they say that family is who you choose to be your family. And so I think that's something too that we need to remember is that, my brother-in-law is a Republican. He's a conservative Republican, and he loves me to death, loves Catherine to death. My brother is a Republican, and he's a bigot. So guess which brother is in our life? And I've got a niece and a nephew that I have no idea. I've met them maybe once. Yeah, maybe once. My niece on my brother's side is in the Air Force, I think. And my nephew is like 8 now. So I've only met him like days after he was born. So I think that, and I think too that people need to understand that just because you're Republican doesn't mean that you're against the LGBTQ community. I'm not saying that in any way.
It's true.
I think that, there are LGBT people who are Republican, and that's great. And then there are, Republicans who love our community because they realize that we're more than just, whatever hateful things other people say. And so I'm sorry you had to go through conversion therapy. Just know that I love you very much. I think you're fabulous, and I just met you. So
you're proof that it doesn't work.
I think that it's important that people understand that just because your family doesn't accept you, there are other people in the community who will. So, there's a guy that I met. He's 16. He hangs out at the Grace Place. He found this list online of things to do when you get ready to come out to make sure that he had everything he needed when he came out, because he knew the moment that he didn't even tell his parents. He knew the moment that he wore a scrunchie in his hair, he was getting kicked out. I mean, that's how bad it was. He only wore, and his hair is probably, Daniel, turn around. Let me see the back of your head. Yeah, okay, my hair's longer. His scrunchie probably did like a very, very tight hold on his hair, but it was just enough for his parents to say, get out. And so he was lucky. He had all of his ducks in a row. He had talked to a certain amount of people in his circle. He knew exactly where he was going. And, he was very strategic about it. And I think it saved his life, because I think had he not done that, he probably would have completed suicide.
And you made an important point there, Rebecca, is that support for the LGBT community doesn't. It can come from people who are Democrats or Republicans, and the same with transphobia and homophobia. You can get it from Democrats and Republicans. And one of the effects that I think we're seeing on the legal side of that is that there are more out Republicans who identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community, which is influencing some Republicans. And I think that's probably, and conservatives, and I think that's true. Even, we've seen one of the topics of late has been, the 6-3 decision from the Supreme Court last June, where there was a recognition that the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act for employment discrimination on the basis of sex includes sexual orientation. And you have 2 conservatives there who aren't just, towing a party line, who are actually, applying logic and to their reasoning. And, you're just seeing more welcoming attitudes from a lot of Republicans. When I grew up, I thought Republicans hated gay people, and a lot of them did. A lot of them still do. But it's there's been some improvements there as well.
As an attorney, what types of things can you tell other maybe up and coming people who are just finishing law school that they could do to help the community?
I think one of the biggest things to do is get involved one way or another. Some people have time, some people have money, some people have neither. For people who have neither, it's put on your mask first, take care of yourself first. But whenever you're able to, in one way or another, a lot of people think about, oh, well, it's giving back and I haven't got enough yet. But actually being involved in the community is not only a great way to give back, but it's also a great way to exist. And to be a supporting member, whether you're volunteering with a local organization, doing fundraising, or maybe you're working all the time, but maybe giving some of that money to an organization that you support. For lawyers, we have I guess here locally, maybe it's just well, probably predating the pandemic, but a relative lack of interest among LGBT lawyers being involved in bar associations. And so membership is tough for us, keeping our membership up, developing leaders to take over after me, hopefully someday. That's been challenging as well. People are frequently moving, and that's sort of here, a lot of them just aren't interested in being involved. And I think it really starts earlier on, getting into the habit of being involved, that I would recommend to young folks who are considering a career in law or in policy, social work, making those connections. Because from the legal perspective, it's also a networking opportunity. You meet people, and those become your friends or your colleagues, and eventually, potential, clients, and a source of revenue. Even though that's shouldn't be the primary concern, but it's definitely a benefit to getting out there.
So I have a friend who is in law school. One of the things that they're struggling with is debating whether they should start with sexual orientation or gender identity. And so if you want to, as an attorney, if you want to go, should you go both routes at the same time, learning and understanding and supporting, or should you take one route first and then pitch on the other route? Because they are very different, right? So sexual orientation is all about who you're attracted to. Gender identity is about how you identify up here in the brain, right? It's all about who you are on the inside. And so, how does an attorney make that connection to understand that they're not the same thing, they're very different. And so, if you want to take on a case and you have the option of sexual orientation versus gender identity, how does that happen?
Those are really good questions. I think that if there's an irreconcilable conflict of being able to specialize in both areas in terms of prioritization, my recommendation would be gender identity. And the reason for that is twofold. One is the law on sexual orientation has been developing for so long, and there are a lot of competent lawyers to handle that. And there are not as many competent lawyers to handle gender identity issues. And the law is still developing there. So that's, two things. One is there's a market for lawyers who understand that area of law, the trends and where things are going and what the challenges are. And two, it's a business opportunity to, and a community service opportunity to be able to serve those members where there might not be a lot of existing competent representation. So that's just my thoughts. I'm sure other people would have different thoughts, but a lot of the lawyers who handle gender identity issues also handle sexual orientation issues. because generally, we're kind of, part of a larger community. And with the recent Supreme Court decision, I guess it was last year, so not so recent, but they kind of treated it all as the same. And one of the things that I've come to realize that unites us is that there are norms that are established by the sex we're assigned at birth. And those norms include how you present yourself, how you identify inside, who you're sexually attracted to. And it's the nonconformity or the failure to conform to those ideas that is the underlying common or one of the common issues that or reasons why people in our community feel or get discriminated against and are discriminated against.
Cool.
So we're almost out of time. So kind of closing thoughts from everybody. What would you like to leave this group with for, notes of optimism after Bostock last year, or, just whatever you'd like to leave the audience with. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. I'll start. Definitely optimism. The Supreme Court is supposed to decide another important case with regard to where religious freedom falls into the mix on these recent decisions. I think there was a case involving an adoption agency who, for religious reasons, supposedly declined to consider gay individuals for adoption placements. So that should be coming out. So we'll see. And other than that, on the local level, we're seeing a lot of local courts in Texas follow the Bostock opinion. So extending the decisions that have made with regard to federal law to state law, which affects a lot more people and more businesses.
Yeah, I just want people to just remember that, we're all human and we're all in this together, and we need to be kind to one another. I think that, if you're being kind to one another, then you can't be homophobic or racist or transphobic or any other stuff. If you're genuinely being kind, then there's no room for anything else. So just be kind.
All right, my ending remarks. I want to cause a wave. My ending remarks. Eunuchs. In biblical days, they're called eunuchs. They meet the definition of transgender. And I'm bringing this up because of religion. Religion has persecuted LGBT people for years now. They've been persecuting us. Eunuchs, Isaiah 56:3-5. Matthew 19:12. Acts 8:26-40. Eunuchs are all acceptable in the eyes of God. So all the Christians out there who want to persecute us, remember, it's in the scriptures. We are good people and we are appreciated. So I just caused a wave, and I know that's a controversial issue. Thank you. Goodbye.
Gotta love Josephine.
Yes, thank all of you so much for showing up and so generously giving your time to discuss this, and to also to celebrate June and to give some guidance to people who want to be not just allies, but to be more effective allies. So I think that this was a fantastic conversation we had today. So I really do appreciate you all joining us.
And if anybody wants a further conversation, or if they want to know if they're doing something correctly, my email is open, so feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording then. Thank you all so much. We are going to distribute the YouTube link